Alright, welcome back to the kitchen. Change the camera angle up a little bit. You can see my bright smiling face, my sunny disposition, and of course, the beard. Alright, well let's get to it. We're just going to do some quick Mirepoix. Now Mirepoix, there's a ratio. It's 2 parts onions, 1 part carrot, 1 part celery. So depending on how many pounds of vegetables that you want in your stock, 8 ounces of onion, 4 ounces of celery, 4 ounces of carrot, and that gives you a pound of vegetables. Now down in the south, around where I'm at right now, a little further east a little bit, there's the Holy Trinity, and instead of celery, you replace it with peppers, bell peppers. Some people like to mix it up and go with the red and the yellow as well as the green. So, depends on the cuisine you're cooking, all right? But for a basic stock, we're going to use Mirepoix, all right? And so, there's only a little preparation that you need to do. Personally, I don't like eating the ends of the carrot. Well, there's a carrot top, where the carrot top was, and sometimes the tip may be a bit damaged. Maybe I want to cut that off. I used to peel these, thinking it made them better, but all I was really doing was robbing nutrients from the stock. So I don't peel these anymore. And it's just real simple. Just slice the end off. Set it to the side. When it comes to the celery, like I bought these already cut. Maybe I want that oxidized end on there, maybe I don't. You could just cut a little bit off, and now you have a nice fresh end. No oxidation at all. Again, it's up to you, but I found it really doesn't make a difference. What I have found that makes a difference is if the vegetables are cut somewhat uniformly. Now you can spend all day cutting these carrots and the celery, or you could put the slicing blade into the vegetable attachment on the KitchenAid and slice these. So let me reconfigure my area just a little bit. Okay, you're definitely going to want to peel these onions. So what you have to understand is that if your recipe calls for 8 ounces of onion, and you pick up an onion that weighs 8 ounces, you're not getting 8 ounces of onion, because you're going to get rid of the peeling and the ends. So there's some waste. You don't want so much waste that you leave edible portion. Like if I were to cut, let's see, right there, I would leave a lot of edible portion right here. If you're cooking at home, it really is not going to make that much of a difference. But if you're working in a restaurant, or if you're cooking a big meal, it starts to add up fast. So, also when you cut the ends off, you'll notice I only took a very, very small sliver just to get past where this top was. Right? I don't want to cut just the top because some of this will stick to the end of the onion. All right. Some people like to leave the root end intact because it it makes it easier to cut. However, I have found that it doesn't really make that much difference at all, because we're not cutting these into some fine brunoise. We can just rough chop these and it's fine, because these are going to cook into nothing. It's going to get strained out anyway. Alright, so we have a couple choices. You see that I'm taking off just that little thin layer of paper, and I have to kind of work at that. And then now we still have some more paper. Or you could just say, well, I'm going to sacrifice the outer portion. I'm just going to take this whole outer layer off. So we'll take that off. But then you have to also understand this is edible. This is part of your edible portion. So how much waste are you willing to tolerate? Well, as it turns out, that if you minimize waste as much as possible, that there is a table of information you can download where it will tell you how much waste, if you peel your vegetables correctly, how much waste that involves. So you could calculate, if you needed 8 ounces of onion, how much would you actually buy at the store? So that's what we call as purchased. You would buy a little more than 8 ounces. Okay. So just remember, if you're careless in how you peel, you're throwing money in the trash can. You may as well just open your wallet and dump the contents into the trash can. That goes for running a restaurant as well as your home budget. And there is a rule of thumb in the restaurant industry that goes like this: if you watch the pennies, the dollars will take care of themselves. So pay attention to the details, and the big stuff is automatically taken care of, because every big thing is just a collection of related small details. So if you pay attention to the right details, you don't have to worry about the big stuff. All right. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to run the onions, the carrots, and the celery through the slicer. It'll cut them relatively the same. They'll be relatively uniform. Everything will be cut fine enough. It won't be cut perfectly even, but this isn't about presentation. It's about getting this small enough to release its flavor in the cooking process. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and run these things through. I'll come back in a moment and I'll show you really what do we end up with. So I'll tell you what we're starting with. We're starting with 5 pounds of onions, 2.5 pounds of carrots, 2.5 pounds of celery. I'm gonna make some chicken stock. I'm gonna make a lot of chicken stock. So I need a lot of Mirepoix. All right, so I will come back in a few moments and show you what I did. Be right back. All right, so it's about how many, just to give you an idea. It's a large size salad bowl. It's about how many peelings. If you look at the peelings, you find very little edible portion. And so this little bit edible portion I'm going to reclaim right here. I'm going to reclaim that. but it's just carrot tops and onion peelings. And so you can kind of get an idea what was back. That's what the proper ratio of Mirepoix looks like. Okay. So now, I'll pause this thing again. I'm going to cut all this up, and you'll see what that volume looks like. So I've only cut a little. This is just one little bit of onion, a little bit of celery, a little bit of carrot. So that way you can see the size pieces it comes out. Definitely not uniform. I guess the carrots and the celery are, but the onion's not. But it doesn't matter because of the way we're going to use it. So it just needs to be small enough to be able to release its flavors. There are some chefs who would disagree, who would say, well, you should cut up all the vegetables the same size. But this is going to cook for so long, it's really not going to matter. That's my point of view on the deal. If you have a differing opinion, that's okay too. All right. It's just that instead of taking 10 minutes to perform a task, I can perform this task in 2 minutes with a little bit of machinery that I have on hand. All right, so I'll cut the rest and we'll see what that looks like. Never ever stick your finger beyond here. Don't reach in there, don't reach in there. Turn the machine off, unplug it. Use a food pusher or another piece of food. If you notice the way I'm doing, my hand is not like this, I'm not pushing down like that, it's flat. Because if I happen to slip, my thumb doesn't go in there. There was a woman who worked at one of the places I worked at while I was on my day off, thank goodness. She reached inside of a jammed up food processor to take the carrot out. She didn't turn the machine off, but she did not unplug it. And she lost a good part of her hand. Oh, they sewed it back on. However, it was never the same. Okay. So as you can see, there's quite a lot. So I'm going to get back to it. All right. Time for the reveal. So 2.5 pounds of celery, 2.5 pounds of carrots, and 5 pounds of onions. So 10 pounds of vegetables. And here we are. This is a lot of Mirepoix. Now, some people, they'll cut the onions, put those separate. Carrots, put those separate. Celery, have that separate. And so they'll sweat the onions. So they'll cook the onions in a little bit of fat until they get milky. And then they'll add the celery till the celery starts to soften. And then they'll add the carrots, because believe it or not, carrots have a lot of water in them. And they cook them until the carrots become tender. And from there, they go on to make the sauce. Or I mean the stock. But what I'm really making is broth. And so when I come back on in just a moment, I'm going to have a completely different setup. My friend the KitchenAid here will not be here. I'll have a roaster pan, and I'll have a little butane burner to saute the vegetables off. And as they saute off, they go into the roaster pan. And to that, I'll add a couple young chickens, and I will cover with water. I will add some spices, and we'll cook them until they are done. And just for fun, I'm going to reserve a little bit of this Mirepoix, the last bit that I saute. I've got one of those pre-cooked chickens from the supermarket. It's just lemon pepper seasoning. And so I didn't, I bought two. I thought we were going to eat two, and we only ate one, so I put one in the freezer. So we'll see what kind of a broth that makes. Might be kind of nice. It might be a fail. We'll check it out. All right, so I had to retool here, and I'll be back in just a moment. And we're back. All right. So you want to make sure that your pan is warm before you put the oil in. The metal, if you look at it under a microscope, is very rough. They say there's pores in the metal, and it's not perfectly smooth. It's rough and jagged, but as the metal heats up, it expands, and a lot of those jagged pieces come back together, and it sort of seals up. And so we want to get that to happen first. Also, if the pan is not warm, when we put our food in, it takes a lot longer for the pan to heat up. Whereas if the pan is warm to begin with, it maintains a more even and consistent cooking surface, a more even and consistent temperature. And the temperature is what causes different chemical reactions in foods to produce what we call cooked foods. It changes our starches into sugars. It changes our proteins a bit. There's something called the Maillard reaction. If you want a nice crust on your steak, you have to have a ripping hot pan, because that's the amount of energy it takes to transform the proteins, to break them down into sugars, and then to caramelize those sugars. And that pan has to stay hot the whole time for that to happen. Now, there's a little more to it in the Maillard reaction, but that's essentially what it is. And so one thing that I do is there we go. I put some water in the pan, not a whole lot, just maybe a 1/16 of an inch over the whole surface, and then I boil off the water. And I let it go a minute or two. Okay. So then we add a nice light oil, because we want to taste chicken. We're not going to use lard. We're not going to use tallow. All right. And so once we put the oil in there, we should see the oil sort of convect. You know how the water moves around when it's boiling? We should see something similar. So when these vegetables go in, they sizzle. You don't want to overload the pan. You want to keep the food sizzling. I think this is about the last that you put in there. It's okay. It's okay if this takes a few batches to cook off and up this Mirepoix, because we're making quite a bit. So this roasting pan, it's heating up. right before I put these vegetables in, I'm gonna add a little bit of oil to this pan, just so they don't stick on the bottom. But most of the heat on a roaster pan comes from the side. That's where most of it is, so I can feel it's too hot to touch. Down to about here. Here I can keep my finger on the pan. If I come up to about here, that's about where the heating happens. A little toss. Now, one thing with these, here's another tidbit of information that is helpful when using these butane burners. Every once in a while, you got to check to make sure the flame is there. So I had this set to full heat to begin with. It's not sizzling as much. Then again, we've cooked off some of the water. And that's why I keep a spare on hand. All right. Okay, so let's see how soft the carrots are. They're about al dente. There we go. Ah, there we go. Doesn't take much, just a little drizzle. Clean up the pan. There we are. We'll start the process all over. I do think I'm going to add a little bit of water. Just like get some vegetables poured in this pan. We'll get a little bit of water added to here. So we can get some of that good juice flowing. Now with chicken, I want a light colored stock, so I'm not going to brown anything. I'm just softening. If I were to brown the outside of the chicken, I'd produce a darker sauce, and that's not what I want. So I'm going to pause this. I'm going to add some oil to the roaster pan. I'll be back.